this computer. So I'm Dr. Razan. I'm a pediatric dietitian. I'm doing an interview with Munira Adnwala, who's a specialist occupational therapist in pediatrics. Thank you, Munira, for spending the time with us on this interview. The focus today is really on how your practice has adapted for remote practice. So my first question is a really easy one: is how has your practice adapted during COVID time?
We have gone to virtual therapy, and we're doing a lot of work closely with the parents and also using more video. So parents are sending samples of videos of their children doing skills before an assessment. And we are observing those videos as our, to see how they're doing on certain skills. And so doing that and combined with video parent consultations and also video treatment sessions with the child, but the parent has to be there a lot more now.
Yes. And did you have to, because I could imagine you do much more physical, because normally you would actually work with the child. Did you have to adjust your practice according to that? Find new tricks?
Yeah, it's actually been really cool to see the things that you can do, even physical things, with really simple things. So, for example, we've been doing a lot with books, because all the kids have lots of books, and we are seeing how many books can you balance on your hand, or can you balance a book on your head and your hand and your knee, or can you crawl around with books on your back, for example. So just finding, or using coins and balancing coins on your fingers, and or hiding the coins in the Play-Doh. So just finding, it's been amazing to see how much you can do with very little, and with what parents have at home. And I think they found that quite encouraging, that they don't need special equipment to do things, and some of these things are really fun and the kids are enjoying it, and they can just get those books anytime that they need to do
that. I mean, that sounds amazing. So if I just think about the practicality for you as an occupational therapist, and you've already given examples of how you're running your clinic. So if I was a parent, how would it now work for remote working? If I get in contact with you, what would you do? What would be the sequence to kind of get a remote consultation going with them?
So usually the parents call me, and then I have a discussion with them, and I usually collect information beforehand. So I will get the standard information on birth history, medical history. I'll send them a sensory profile to fill out. And then I also have, depending on the child's age, I have a list of certain skills that I want to see before we do their first session. So the parents will send me those videos of their child doing those activities, and I include that as part of my assessment time. And then for children that need to see me beforehand, they can see pictures of me, because for some kids it's hard to connect with somebody you have never met, so they see pictures of me on my website.
Okay, so you actually allow that.
Kids, so they see that, or they see pictures of me with my kid, and I think it just helps them to be comfortable with somebody new.
Yes, because that's from a sensory perspective really important.
Yeah.
So in regards to you've already touched about that you do quite a lot of work before you start with your remote consultation. How do you assess who is suitable and who's not suitable for a remote consultation?
Yeah, for me, I think when I speak with a parent, if any parent is really involved and understands their child and is willing to learn and understand the principles and the foundational skills, to me, they're a really good candidate. And in fact, some of those sessions have gone even better, and the child has made even more progress because their parent is totally with it and is able to understand them and read their signs and signals throughout the day when I'm not even there. More.
That's amazing. And I know this was not part of the initial question list, but what are the difficulties that you have found? I mean, you've highlighted a lot of the positives, but what are the difficulties?
So I find that sometimes I have to do activities that to me seem a bit simpler, And that is because I need to direct the parent on how to do it. And I have to be really, I have to go slower with how we're doing things, just so, because what seems really obvious and clear to me, it's actually not as obvious to people, because it's just because we are whatever profession we are. So I feel like I have to go a bit slower and explain things in a lot more detail. But this is where my clinical practice has been helpful, because I can almost imagine and feel where my hands are or what I'm doing with the child. Does that make sense?
No, and so you basically direct, the parents become your hands almost. You're directing them by giving them very clear guidance. But so what you're saying, even though that's a negative, you've worked ways around that.
Yeah, it feels like it's a negative because we're going slower, but sometimes going slow is not really negative, because it's more about the process versus the end result. And sometimes I think for parents to go through that process is really good, but it's hard sometimes you have people that want to see an end result. They want to see the red block in the red cup, if you know what I'm saying. Yes. All the time. But sometimes going through that process means that you're doing it and you're able to do more, as in the parent, I mean.
So you're empowering them, basically.
Yeah. But it is trickier to do as well, depending on some of the children, especially those who have their needs are a little bit more involved.
Yes. So we gave you a challenge to say, come up with 5 top tips for your profession as an occupational therapist to completing a remote consultation. What are your 5 top tips, would you say?
Yeah. So one is, I think I've already discussed it a little bit, but it's to go slower and more into the process and really explaining things slower, and even making the activity simpler than you would do it in a session. But that's because you have somebody new doing it with the child. So to go slower and simpler, but it doesn't mean you're not going to get as good of a result. It's still going to be good because the parent is going to be able to do it many more times in their day.
In their day. Okay.
And the second is like less is more.
Okay, explain a little bit more about
what
that.
I mean is sometimes it feels like you don't have a lot of equipment and things around you, but using what the families have at home and doing it in a really creative, fun way is the kids have fun with it. They're having as much fun playing with those books as they are crawling through the tunnels and obstacle courses that we do over here. They're just finding it really fun and interesting. So sometimes, so that's what I mean by less is more. And it also means that you'll get more carryover.
And what is your third top tip?
So the third one was doing spending a lot of time with the parents and talking with the parents and explaining the rationale behind what you do, and so that they can understand. Like for me, it's more about sensory processing, or if they're coming to me for handwriting, why am I working on their core strength? And if you spend more time with the parent and explain more to them and they understand it, they start naturally implementing things, and they just understand their kids more, and I think they find comfort in that. So spending more time on parent, kind of coaching the parents and talking to them more.
Yeah, so it sounds like, so we're in a one-to-one session which you had, you would be doing much more. So now you have to verbalize it all.
Yeah, and parents like it. They find it interesting to understand their child.
Yes, and you're empowering them. Okay, so that's a third tip. What is your fourth tip?
Fourth one, to explain what seems really obvious to you. So things that seem really obvious to you is not obvious to another person. It's only obvious to you because your brain is full of lots of knowledge about your field. But to really break it down into small steps and explain more.
But I see that the same, because you don't have that kind of, you don't have a person in front of you. So you already in your head have made a plan. And so where actually they are in front of a video and they don't quite understand what your plan, and I see that myself with they have distractions as well. So now during the pandemic, I've often dealt with a lot of other children at home, so they can't
Yeah.
always concentrate on what you're saying. So yeah, no, that's a fantastic tip. And what is your final fifth nugget of knowledge?
I think to be like praising the parents who are doing the therapy or the work with the child, even for the really littlest things, and being very specific about what you're praising them for, so that, because some of them are feeling like there's a lot on them right now, and for them to hear that yes, you're doing really well with where you put your hands or the way you set up that activity, it was perfect for working on this particular skill. So just really praising them, because they need to hear that they are doing a good job on, they think that they're not as good as you, but it's nice for them to hear that they are doing well with what they are being directed to do.
I think that's an amazing final message, because I think all of us, it doesn't matter in the nutrition field where we're working, is the acknowledging the input and the effort it takes from whomever you're talking to. That's a really good final message. Munira, thank you very much for having a discussion. And I'm sure whomever is doing this course will really enjoy this interview.